Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's Holocaust Memorial Day meeting, hosted by Stand Up to Racism, and to thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Michaela Loebner, and I'll be chairing our panel of speakers this evening. I'm a member of Stand Up to Racism in South London, and I'm also the daughter of a Jewish refugee from Vienna who came to Britain through the Kindertransport scheme as a child in 1939, thus escaping with his life while so very many others did not. We meet together this year, some 81 years since the liberation of Auschwitz, to remember the victims of the Holocaust, the 6 million Jews, the millions of Roma Sinti, disabled, LGBT+, Black people, trade unions, socialists. And we meet to bear witness to that horror, but also to learn from it. We're living in very dangerous times right now. And last year, when we came together, the forces of fascism were once again on the rise, both in Europe and in Trump's America. And the far right were organizing on a big scale. And it gave an urgency and a relevance to our meeting. This year, we meet as the far right are building their forces at a massive pace. And we witness Trump's murderous ICE agents bringing terror to the streets of Minnesota and murder to the streets of Minnesota, rounding people up, people of color, for mass deportation. It's a chilling sight that we're witnessing. And here we see Reform UK promising mass deportations. And we experience in September the biggest fascist-led mobilisation in our UK history. So today, this brings such more relevance to what we're doing. So we're not just bearing witness as we need to, bringing into the light, once again, the horror of the fascism of Nazi Germany. We're not just commemorating its victims, but we're seeking to do something to prevent such a tragedy, such a horror from happening ever again. I'm very, very honoured to introduce our speakers this evening, the first of whom, who has spoken with us before and often joins us on anti-racist and anti-fascist actions around the country, particularly in London. I'm very happy to introduce Rabbi Herschel Gluck, who is a rabbi from Stamford Hill. He's also the co-chair of the Arab Jewish Forum and the chair and founder of the Muslim Jewish Forum. And I would like to welcome him to speak to you all this evening. Over to you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Michaela. And it's a great honor to be here this evening with all of you and to reflect upon the message and the meaning of the day to all of us, and to think that it is a wake-up call. My father, like Michaela's father, came from Vienna. My father came as a child refugee in March 1939. My mother came on the Kindertransport December 38. Vienna was quite a singular place. It was the only place where the SS actually protected the Jews from the Viennese who were inciting a pogrom against the Jews. The SS protecting Jews sounds ironic. But what sounds even more ironic is that these days in Jerusalem, Jews are inviting the far right to a conference about anti-Muslim and anti-Arab sentiment, saying that the far right are the allies of the Jewish people. And one would have thought that this is an April Fool's joke, but sadly, it's happening in the middle of January, on Holocaust Memorial Day. and the world is silent? Where are the voices being raised against this sacrilege of Jews supporting people who are Holocaust deniers, who commit terrible crimes against all minorities, including Jews, and who see themselves as the successors, as the inheritors of the legacy of Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, the whole chamber of horrors that we are bearing testimony to today. Hitler said, when contemplating genocide, who remembers the Armenians? Who remembers the genocide that the Ottomans committed against the Armenians? And therefore he said, we can do it again and no one will care. What's happening now is even worse. We are commemorating Holocaust and at the same time supporting and allying ourselves with the very people whose ideology committed this terrible crime, from which we are still traumatized, from which we are still suffering, and which is still it's a scar which still hasn't healed. Holocaust Memorial Day isn't just a day on the calendar. It's something which we need to feel in our heart. It's something which we need to remember what we are actually commemorating. At a time when the fascist right is on the march and is blatant and brazen in what it is doing, we are not standing up enough. I know it's a difficult one. I know it's challenging. I know that we find it very, very hard to continue this struggle, but struggle we must. Because I would say that most people are decent people. And evil only triumphs, as the famous saying goes, when good people are bystanders. And people are bystanders because they feel that their voice alone cannot change the trajectory of history. But when they hear other voices being raised, when they hear that there are organized groups who stand up to this evil, that gives them the courage, that gives them the ability to feel that they can do something. And even if we feel that we can't change the whole world, there's the famous story which I've quoted in the past, that up north in Durham, the sea went out and there were a load of jellyfish stranded on the beach. And there was a man on the beach going and throwing jellyfish back into the sea. And someone came up to him and said, there are millions of jellyfish here. Do you think you'll be able to chuck all the jellyfish back into the sea? What do your actions make a difference? So he picked up one jellyfish and threw it into the sea and says, for that jellyfish, it makes a difference. Very often we feel if we can't change the world, it's all or nothing. But the truth is that if we make a difference for one immigrant, for one person who is suffering persecution from fascism, so for that person we have made a difference and it's worth it. And as Maimonides says, the Rambam, the famous Jewish sage, he said we have to look at the world as if it's equally balanced between good and evil. And if we have one good thought, one good word, one good action, we tip the scales for ourselves and for the whole world and bring salvation to the world. So therefore we shouldn't underestimate the work that we are doing. We shouldn't underestimate the positive actions that we take against hatred, against discrimination, against racism, against any forms of bias. Because by doing that, we actually not only change the world for ourselves, we change the world for each and every person. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. That was a very important start to our meeting this evening. Next, I would like to introduce to you Weyman Bennett, who is one of the two co-conveners of Stand Up to Racism, who's going to speak to us. So over to you, Weyman.
I'd like to thank Rabbi Herschel Gluck for his brilliant speech and a brilliant way of introducing, I think, one of the most difficult topics that we face today. There's an opening when you go into Auschwitz, a saying, and it says, those people that don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. And each time we've gone there or seen that sign, it's become a greater meaning today, now, than it's ever meant. And I say this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, look at Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage made open anti-Semitic statements when he was at school. 60 people, many of them Jewish, have come forward to say that he used to say, gas them all, and Hitler was right. Now, these statements are not neutral statements. They're not banter. They're not jokes. They're serious statements. And what we saw was the gaslighting of the whole Jewish community and everybody else when he simply turned around and said, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's what a schoolboy says. But this schoolboy, we're told, is going to be our next prime minister. And somebody who refuses to apologize for something that is clearly wrong repeats that statement. Those that forget the past are doomed to repeat what happened for the future. And I say that because when you look at reform, when people look at the growth of fascism, when they look at people doing that, we see all around us the signs in which our democracy is being eroded by those people. If you go to Epping, some people may have seen this. I saw people making Hitler salutes. I also saw the leader, the deputy leader at that time of the Conservative Party, standing next to a known Nazi terrorists, standing side by side. In other words, endorsing something which in the past would have been unacceptable. We have to remember Holocaust Memorial Day as not a memorial to the 6 million murdered and the so many murdered as well, but also a preventative thing. People's voices were destroyed. They didn't get to speak. I mean, thank you so much, Michaela, in terms of chairing this meeting and talking about what happened to your family. These are not hidden pictures. These are not things, they're stolen lives. They're destroyed histories. They're things that you live in horror of thinking happened to your family, to anybody else. And the fact that we're seeing them repeated, the idea that somebody in ICE, who's the leader of it, dresses like an SS officer when he goes around arresting people and speaks like that and says that when we talk about the Gestapo, that we shouldn't talk about that, should sell a chill down all our backs. It should make us angry and defiant. It should make us understand why we should resist. And you know, one of the things, I grew up in East London and I grew up amongst Holocaust survivors. And do you know what the most terrible thing that they told me? It was that when they came here as a kindergarten transport and they saw the last time they saw their parents, it was the fact that their parents wanted to keep their children alive as their last act, that they felt the powerlessness of the power of a Nazi state ripping apart your life. And that millions of people had that happen to them, and we had the power to stop it, and it wasn't stopped. The idea that that can happen again to people is something which we should really talk about, how we redouble our efforts. I'm pleased together to see the Together coalition coming together after what happened when Tommy Robinson, the fascist, who took money from Elon Musk, who says that he did the Nazi salute as something which should educate all of us. The richest man in the world giving a Nazi salute and endorsing the politics of Mussolini and Hitler should also give us a warning that we live in dangerous times. But we live in dangerous times that require all of us as citizens, as people, to do something. I echo what Rabbi Herschel Gluck said. It's not good enough for us to remember history without organizing to make sure that history rises up and stands up against it. Every act of resistance is a chance of us to resist. The Minnesotans in their thousands coming out gives us heart that people do not accept this. The people that march in Germany against the AfD, the people that march against the FN inside France. I want to end up by talking about why, when we remember Holocaust Memorial Day, we understand that so many people were destroyed. LGBT people were murdered. People that politically disagreed were murdered. So when we see Donald Trump repeat the kind of lies that Goebbels put out in front of our eyes, we have to begin to organize. But again, I want to end up on this word of hope. I do not believe that we are the only ones that see. I think the harder things get, the better people will respond. And I always remember as an 8-year-old child, as the National Front, the 4 people of the National Front attacked me on the way to school. It was my neighbours that came out and said, "You will not attack a child." I think that same force exists now of workers, of neighbours, of people that say never again for Islamophobia, antisemitism, racism, any form of division. And we have to organise to honour the names of those people that had their lives snatched from them, that we can give them voice because their voices were stolen. We will never be silenced, and they will never be silenced because we will remember them and we will shout it and we will fight it and we will raise our fists against the chance of fascism and the Nazis coming back again.
Thank you so much, Weyman, for those powerful words. And I think resistance and organisation is the theme of our meeting this evening, so that we do make it as never again mean something. Our next speaker I'm honoured to introduce is Victoria Holmes. Victoria is a writer on Roma history and many other things, I believe. But over to you, Victoria, to address us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the panelists that have spoken so far. They've been incredibly inspiring. So I'm going to talk to you in general about what we can do, but with a bit of history first. On a day like Holocaust Memorial Day, the state and the powers that be want a funeral. They want you to light a candle and feel a safe distance from the dead and go home. But I'm not here to give you a funeral. I'm here to give you a briefing. I am a Romani. I carried the silence of my great-grandmother, Lily Maskell, like a stone in my throat. She died in 1974 with a camp stove in her bedroom. After 77 years of the state's care, she trusted fire could light her own hands more than gas piped through a system that could be cut off when you missed a payment. When she died, the state's final word in her 77 years was retired workhouse packer. 6 million Jewish souls in the Shoah, 500,000 Roma and Sinti in the Primas, the true number may be higher, because we weren't worth counting. The disabled, the gay, the LGBT, the communists, all first through the camp gates. But let me tell you what the textbooks leave out. The Nazis didn't start with camps, they started with science. In 1936, Dr. Ritter's Racial Hygiene Research Unit measured Romani skulls, photographed Romani faces, took blood from our children and filed it in the Gypsy Card Index. This was genocide dressed up as scholarship. Then in 1938, Himmler's degree for the struggle against the Gypsy plague, not problem, plague. We were a disease, and the only cure was extermination. They came at night and entire families were rounded up to go to the Marzahn, which was a sewage dump outside of Berlin. From there, they were deported east to Helmano, to Auschwitz, At Kellenho in 1942, 5,000 Roma were gassed in mobile vans. At Auschwitz in February 1943, the gypsy family camp, who were kept together for Mengelé's experiments, died of typhus starvation. By May 1944, 70% were dead from disease before the SS even tried to liquidate us. When they came on the 16th of May, they found our people armed and barricaded at Auschwitz. The SS came to liquidate the camp. They expected slaughter, but they found revolt. Our people armed themselves with pipes, stones, smuggled tools, and said, if you want us, you come through the fire. The SS, the most efficient killing machine in history, retreated. They were afraid of the word no. They came back in August with more men and more guns. 22nd of August 1944. 2,897 Roma, mostly children, women, and the elderly, were driven into the gas chambers. The Jewish witnesses in the camp testified that the Roma sang as they walked to their deaths. Not resignation, they sang through defiance. But for 73 days, our people had held that line. For 73 days, the machine had stopped running. Between 220,000 and 500,000 Roma were murdered in the Holocaust. And we'll never know the true records. Like I said, we weren't worth counting. Entire Romani communities were erased. There was no records, no survivors, and no graves. West Germany didn't recognise the Romani genocide until 1982. That's 37 years after liberation. Dr. Robert Rittler, the architect of the Romani genocide, was never prosecuted. He died in 1951, a free man. When I say remember, I mean we have to force the state and people to remember. Because the machine has never stopped, it's just rebranded. If you look at the UK in 2026, the far right isn't fringe. Elon Musk provides digital gallows for our dehumanization. Tommy Robinson visits a genocidal Israeli government forging an alliance that uses Jewish memory to justify a police state serving only capital. The digitalized gypsy cards are already here, in DWP algorithms, in facial recognition cameras, in data sharing between councils, police, and border enforcement. We are the state's research and development department. They test surveillance on the GRT first, data sharing on the GRT first, removal of children, denial of housing, criminalization of our existence on us first. And when it works, and when we all don't fight back hard enough, they'll scale it up. First the Roma, then all travellers, then migrants, then welfare claimants, then it'll be you. You're next in the queue. But I don't want to end on the misery, because resistance must be material, not symbolic. I said I'll deliver a briefing. This is it. Number one, study the dead. The Birkenau barricades aren't metaphors. They are instructions for the future. Study dual power. Mutual aid isn't charity, it's infrastructure. Start now and don't wait for the crisis to knock at our door. Start small. Every refusal, no matter how small, is a jam in the gears. The damp in our walls and the coals in our bones are policy choices made by the same machine that built the workhouse, the camp, and the deportation centres of today. But us as a class, as working class people, we survived the workhouse, the camp, the council flat. We've chased them from Cable Street. We've chased them from Liverpool. We've broke their lines in Lewisham. We can do that again because we are the heirs of people who made the SS retreat, and we carry that refusal in our blood. We're all still here, and we're all still singing, and we're all refusing to move. And when enough of us refuse to move, the machine stops. We've done it before. We can do it again. My message to end this talk on is to tell everyone to go and jam the machines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. That was incredibly moving and powerful and a brilliant call to action for all of us. I'd like to invite our next speaker, who is David Rosenberg. David is a member of the Jewish Socialist group, a campaigner and an author also. So over to you, David.
Hey, thank you. This week we mark the 81st anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz in 1945 by the Red Army. But my starting point is 90 years ago, in 1936. There are important 90th anniversaries we must mark this year, so pertinent now in a world where racism, fascism, ultranationalism are alive, kicking and murdering in many countries. 90 years ago in Spain, General Franco launched a civil war against the democratically elected government, against ordinary people of Spain, to establish an ultra right-wing dictatorship over them. The already established fascist regimes, Italy and Germany, gave him political and military support. The Spanish people fought back in an uneven battle, but they were boosted by the solidarity of 35,000 mainly working class activists from more than 50 countries who came to Spain through the international brigades to fight against Franco. As a Jewish anti-fascist, I'm proud that 15% or more of those who went were Jewish, many from countries where Jews were 1% of the population. On the 10th of October 1936, one of Franco's generals, General Diano, did a radio broadcast. He said, "Our war is not a Spanish civil war, but a war of Western civilization against the Jews of the entire world." While we remember victims of the Holocaust, let's remember the tens of thousands of anti-fascist Spanish civilians and fighters, both Spanish and international brigadistas, whose bodies lay in Spanish soil, some in mass graves. Some 2,000 anti-fascists went to Spain from Britain, 200 of them from London's East End. Many volunteers there were inspired by taking part in the Battle of Cable Street, October 1936, against Mosley's fascists and against the police facilitating their attempted invasion of the East End's Jewish streets. From autumn 1934, Mosley's movement made anti-Semitism the main plank of their fascist ideology, saying the battle ahead was the great cleansing spirit of fascism against organized Jewry, an unclean alien influence in our national and imperial life. Mosley's all-embracing anti-Semitic vision won him support among sections of every social class. Fascism did not just happen on the continent, it happened here, and just like today, the far-right movements we confront are homegrown. In October, when we celebrate the 90th anniversary of Cable Street, I'll be remembering Charlie Goodman, who spoke at several Jewish socialist events, arrested that day, abused and beaten by the police, then imprisoned for 3 months. But by February 1937, he was fighting fascists in Spain, returned wounded after the Battle of Jarama. He gave me a handwritten list of 36 East Enders, half of them Jewish, killed in the Spanish Civil War. And it tells you where they died, when they died, which battle. Charlie's parents came here from Poland, but when he was around 9 or 10 years old, he went back there for a year and met many family members there, most of whom would later perish in the Holocaust. But that brings us to Poland. In March 1936, the small Polish town of Bzycek had its own Cable Street, a vicious pogrom stirred up by militant far-right anti-Semites in a town nearly 80% Jewish. 2 Jews, a father and a son, were dead and many wounded. One of the pogromists died too. 11 Jews received prison sentences despite acting in self-defense. 39 pogromists were killed too. There were many further acts of anti-Semitic violence by the Polish far right well before the Nazi invasion in 1939. In Krakow, South Poland, a Jewish carpenter, a poet, a songwriter, an anti-fascist called Mordechai Gebirtig wrote a frighteningly prescient song in Yiddish after the Bzycek pogrom. It was called Es brennt, It's Burning. And one verse says, "God forbid the moment will come when our town will be engulfed by flames, reduced to ash, black and empty walls remaining like after a battle." And the final verse is a call to action. It's burning, brothers, it's burning. The remedy depends on you alone. If your town is dear to you, take what you need to put the fire out. Douse it with your own blood. Show you can do this. Gebirtig was killed in a shooting spree by Nazis in the Krakow ghetto in June 1942, but his song continued to be sung in many ghettos. And I first heard that song sung live by a survivor, whom I only knew as Mr. Jakovsky at the first Holocaust commemoration I went to, early 1980s, organised by the Friends of Yiddish in Whitechapel. Such commemorations took place every year from the mid-1940s, long before Britain's state-sponsored Holocaust Memorial Day was created in 2001. And they didn't take place in January, but on 19th of April, when the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began. A date focusing not on death, but resistance, on empowerment that gave dignity back to the people who found so many ways to resist oppression in the ghettos, not just physical ones, but cultural, educational, artistic resistance that made them feel human amid the destruction. And news of the Warsaw Ghetto resistance inspired uprisings and acts of resistance in other ghettos, in concentration camps, even in death camps. Of the 6 million Jews who were murdered, 3 million were Polish Jews, ghettoized, enslaved, starved before being deported to death camps, where they were gassed to death in a modern industrial process designed in Germany by educated architects, scientists, engineers. In late 1930s Germany, they tested mass killing methods on disabled people. Polish Jews in the death camps were joined by other Jews captured and transported there from other countries the Nazis occupied, and of course joined there by many Roma. We must not forget, though, that most of the other Jews were murdered in traditional ways. Most of the other Jews were murdered in traditional ways, shot en masse as the Nazis swept through Soviet lands, buried in mass graves. And the Nazis found many willing collaborators to help them identify and hunt down Jews. And yet, every Holocaust survivor I've met survived because of selfless non-Jews who took great risks to hide them. And if Jews and Roma were marked for complete extermination, many groups, gays, trade unionists, communists, socialists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet prisoners of war, died too from mistreatment, starvation, and slavery. The chair of the Friends of Yiddish, Maya Bogdansky, was a tailor, a socialist, an opponent of all racism. Every year he wrote a new handwritten speech, but it always ended with the same 3 statements. He honored Roma gypsies, who he declared died in exactly the same way as the Jews for exactly the same reasons. He railed against the lie taught in Israeli schools, especially in the 1960s, that diaspora Jews went like lambs to the slaughter. And he railed against those who denied the Holocaust. Sadly, the numbers who deny, downplay, or trivialize the Holocaust are growing again. We live in terrible times. The fascists are having a heyday in Trump's America, Orban's Hungary, Netanyahu's Israel, Modi's India, and here Farage and Robinson are licking their lips in anticipation. The Holocaust was neither the only nor the last genocide, and each genocide, including the one enacted in Gaza, should be remembered in its own right by all, not just the direct targets. Yet even on the left, there are those who pit the experiences of groups targeted in genocides against each other in a kind of oppression Olympics. If we do that, we all lose. We need mutual empathy and solidarity. And my last point, when people ask me what solidarity looks like, I think of Donald Kenrick, born to Polish Jewish immigrants in Hackney in 1929. He joined the Jewish Socialist group early 1980s. By his mid-20s, he spoke more than 25 languages fluently. One was Romani. Several others were dialects of Romani. He co-wrote a book on Gypsy Holocaust experience and worked on Roma rights for decades. Until his dying days in his mid-80s, he was translating from Romani and assisting Roma asylum seekers fighting their immigration cases. He taught our group about our shared Jewish Roma Holocaust histories and the importance of supporting Roma rights campaigns. And I'm so glad to be sharing this platform with Roma representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was really powerful. Solidarity is absolutely key. So, as David said, it's Amazing to be joined by representatives from the Roma and Sinti community. And we have Daniela Abraham speaking with us now, and she is from the Sinti-Roma Holocaust Memorial. Over to you, Daniela.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for giving me the space to speak today. And I want to talk about Roma Holocaust history that is still too often ignored.
Lost her.
Share why remembering is not just a historical for me, but deeply personal. During the Nazi era, the Romans were persecuted, deported, and murdered simply because of who they are or who they were. Men, women, children, entire families targeted under.
Daniela, it's very difficult to hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
That's better.
Yeah, that's better. Sorry. So during the Nazi era, the Roma people were persecuted, deported, and murdered simply because of who they were. Men, women, children, and entire families targeted under racist laws. And this is very important to say because they have been stripped of their rights and sent to the camps where most never returned. Hundreds of thousands of Roma lives were lost across Europe, and yet for decades after the war, our suffering was not recognized, not thought, and not mourned in the same way as others. And for a long time, the Roma survivors were told that what happened to them was not racial persecution, but something else, as if their pain needed extra justification to count. This silence has consequences. When history is erased, injustice repeats itself. And for me, this history is not distant. It lives in my family because my great grandparents and my grandparents were persecuted during the Holocaust. Some of my family members, they never returned back. We don't know what happened to them. They survived, but a survival came cost like a trauma. About my great grandparents and the knowledge that the world had decided they were like disposable. The trauma did not end in the 1945. It traveled through generations, and growing up Roma, I learned in very early that being visible could be very dangerous, that our identity was something to hide in certain spaces, that discrimination did not belong only to the past, it was still happening and shaping our present. And this is why the remembrance matters to me so much, because when the Roma Holocaust is ignored, it sends a message to the Roma lives where perhaps still are and we are worthless. Because when the history is excluded from the education, it allows the stereotypes and the hatred to survive unchallenged. And because when society forgets, the extremists feel emboldened. We're living in the time where the far right ideologies are rising again across Europe. The same narratives about who belongs, who is burden, who is the problem are being recycled, and the Roma communities continue to face the racism, the violence, and exclusion, often justified by myths that have their roots in very ideology that led to the genocide. Remembering the Roma Holocaust is not about the past alone, it's about protecting the future. Is about saying Roma people are part of the Europe's history, and our suffering counts, our voices matters, and our lives today deserve dignity, safety, and equality. For me, the remembrance is also an act of like resistance. by speaking openly, by educating others, and by honoring those who were silenced. And I refuse to let their stories disappear again. I stand here not only as a descendant of survivors, but someone who believes that memory can be a tool for justice. Remembering the Roma Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, mean recognizing humanity then and now, and this is why this matters to me. And it doesn't matter where we came from. If we are Roma, Jewish, if we are Black, if we are from different part of the world, we should never allow this injustice and racism to happen, because it will lead to another genocide, what I'm very afraid of. And we are living in the time, as all of the speakers today, I'm very glad that you mentioned how I was listening to you, and especially to Rabbi Gluck, that we are living in the time when it could happen and it could repeat again. And it's up on us. No one gonna change this. We cannot wait, and we have to be very active, and we need to make awareness and educate not just the public, but also the future generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniela. I'm sorry that your video wasn't highlighted during your brilliant contribution just now. Our final speaker is going to be Sabby Dhalu, who is, alongside Weyman, one of the conveners of Stand Up to Racism. So over to you, Sabby.
Thank you very much, Michaela, and thank you to all of the previous speakers, and solidarity with all of you and your families and loved ones who have suffered the horrific experience of the Holocaust. So yesterday we marked Holocaust Memorial Day, 81 years on from the liberation of Auschwitz by the Soviet Union's Red Army. The Holocaust was a systematic state-organized murder of 6 million Jews. It was a deliberate attempt to eradicate Jewish people from Europe. Anti-Semitism lay at the very core of the Holocaust and was a central pillar of Nazi ideology. And crucially, as other speakers have said, it was not confined to Germany. Anti-Semitism was widespread across Europe, including in Britain. Alongside the 6 million Jews, as others have said, it is estimated that a further 5 million people were murdered by the Nazis. This included Soviet prisoners of war, ethnic Poles, Roma and Sinti people, Serbs, Jehovah's Witnesses, LGBT people, Black people, disabled people, and German political opponents and dissenters, including socialists, communists, and trade unionists. And this history underlines a vital lesson for today: the need for unity in the fight against racism and fascism. The Holocaust Memorial Day Trust captures the significance of remembrance clearly. So the theme for the Holocaust Memorial Day 2026 was bridging generations, and it's a call to action. It reminds us that the responsibility of remembrance does not end with the survivors. It lives on through their children, their grandchildren, and through all of us. And sadly, today's political climate shows how history can echo across generations, from the rise of Nazism in the 1930s to the re-emergence of far-right movements shaping politics with catastrophic consequences today. Events in Minneapolis send a chill down the spine of all decent people. A Gestapo-style police operation rounding up people, including small children, who have every right to remain in the United States. Alongside the fatal shootings of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Pressy, at least 6 other people have died in ICE detention. These are not isolated incidents, they are warning signs. They should also serve as a warning to us here in Britain. If the sharp turn to the right continues without a serious and organised fight back, we risk similar outcomes here. The latest electoral calculus MRP poll puts Reform UK on 31%, translating into 335 seats and a narrow overall majority. The Conservatives trail on 21% with 92 seats. And in practice, there would be little difference between a Reform UK majority government and a Reform UK Conservative coalition. Both would represent Trumpism in Britain, virulent racism combined with economic policies that harm the vast majority of people, and a willingness to align with fascist forces when expedient. Reform UK and Conservative politicians addressed or openly supported fascist demonstrations outside refugee hotels in the summer of 2025. Supporters of Tommy Robinson have pledged to vote for Reform UK. Elon Musk gave a Nazi salute at Trump's inauguration and went on to effectively agitate for a fascist coup when he addressed Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom rally in September 2025, which was the largest fascist demonstration in British history. The rise of fascism is not abstract, it is a clear and present danger today. After the Holocaust, the whole world declared never again. And those words must mean more than remembrance alone. They must mean learning the lessons of history, mobilizing, organizing, and uniting to stop the far right and fascism today. Fascism thrives in conditions of racism, scapegoating, and economic crisis. Never again must therefore also mean fighting for decent living standards and confronting racism in all its forms, antisemitism, Islamophobia, and hatred towards migrants and refugees. Britain has a proud tradition of defeating fascism. Jews, communists, socialists, trade unionists, and others stood together at Cable Street to stop Mosley's black shirts. The Anti-Nazi League and black communities helped defeat the National Front. Unite Against Fascism, trade unionists, and Muslim communities drove back the English Defence League. More recently, in 2018, Stand Up to Racism, Unite the Union, and others defeated the previous incarnation of the Tommy Robinson movement. And that same spirit lives on today. Many of us mobilized to stop racist riots in summer 2024. We stood against the toxic protests targeting refugees in hotels in summer 2025. And though outnumbered, thousands mobilized and spoke out against Robinson and the far right in September 2025. And the Together Alliance Against the Far Right shows that Britain's anti-fascist tradition is reawakening. The rise of fascism poses an existential threat to all of us. So on Saturday, the 28th of March, we must stand together and march in the true spirit of never again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabby. Thank you so much to all our amazing speakers this evening. I'm sure everyone watching will have taken from this meeting what I've taken, and leave it with a sense of very much wanting to commit with renewed determination to that proud tradition that we have built over time of anti-fascism in Britain. We need that unity and we can make a difference. So I really hope that everyone will take all the lessons that have been shared, all the information, all the powerful speeches, and turn those into action. And we'll see you on the streets of Britain on March the 28th, and wherever the far right raise their heads, because together we will defeat the far right. So thank you everybody for your contributions and everyone for listening.
Thank you, Michaela.